I kissed my billionaire boss in front of 200 people under crystal chandeliers and live cameras just to pull poison out of her mouth. I did it knowing that as a black single dad in a rented suit, one wrong move could get me shot fired or in handcuffs before anyone even asked why. So let me ask you, if that had been you, would you have grabbed the glass or grabbed her face the way I did? My name is Nathan Hayes, and this is the part of my life that sounds like a movie, but it's not. It's just what happened when grief, money, power, and bad people all decided to pile on top of each other at the same time. I'm a former Secret Service agent, a black single dad trying to keep my kids' medical bills paid, and at the time I was just a driver. The guy you're not supposed to notice unless the car is late. Invisible on purpose. Background noise. The night everything exploded, I was standing in the corner of a ballroom that looked like somebody cracked open a jewelry box and told rich people to crawl inside. Crystal chandeliers, gold trim. Marble floors, polished so shiny, they grabbed every reflection and stretched it out 200 guests in gowns and tuxes, pretending they were there for charity and not power. The invitation had some foundation name on it, some cause, but you could see it in their eyes. They were there for access, for photos, for deals whispered over champagne. That champagne is important. From my corner, I watched it all the way. I'd been trained to watch, not like a driver, not like staff, but like what I used to be. My eyes weren't on the clothes or the jewelry. They were on the patterns, the exits. Who kept their back to the wall, who scanned the room like they had something to hide, who pretended not to notice the cameras, but always stood at the perfect angle. Old habits don't die, they just get quieter. Front and center in all of it was my boss, Olivia Cartwright. 29 years old, white silk dress hair, pinned up like she'd stepped off a magazine cover 5 minutes earlier. 6 months before her father, the king of Cartwright Industries, had died of a heart attack, and just like that, she'd gone from rich girl to queen of a multi-billion-dollar company. The press adored her. The board tolerated her, and from where I stood, it looked like half the room wanted a piece of her father's empire. She didn't look fragile, though. She moved through that crowd like she'd been born in rooms like this. Smile dialed in. Just right handshake. Firm eyes. Sharp. I'd only been driving her for 2 months, but it didn't take long to notice that the poor little heiress story the media loved was a lie. She was smart, sharper than most of the men twice her age who tried to talk over her in board meetings, and someone I was almost sure wanted her dead. I didn't know who yet, but I knew the pattern. Weird accidents near her small security glitches that shouldn't have happened in a company that size, faces around her father's death that didn't quite match the official story. The death certificate said heart attack, but his call to me 2 weeks before he died said something else. You learn to listen to that sixth sense when you've watched people try to get close to a president. I wasn't there as security, though. On paper, I was the driver, full stop. The company had a security detail, a whole team, but a lot of them had been hired by the same people I didn't trust. So her father had wanted one person close to her that only he knew about. 2 weeks after he called me, he was dead. And I showed up anyway, because my daughter's medical bills didn't care if something smelled wrong. Sophie, that's my little girl, was 7 at the time. 2nd grade, big brown eyes with gold flecks, laughs so loud the neighbors could hear it through the walls. She wants to be a veterinarian. She also has medical issues that don't wait politely for your paycheck to catch up. So when Olivia's father called and said, "I need someone who can drive and watch," I said yes because pride is nice, but it doesn't pay for prescriptions. So that's how I ended up in that ballroom, invisible in a black suit, standing where drivers stand, watching a room full of people who make more money in a day than I'd seen in 3 years, and deciding whether I was paranoid or not paranoid enough. Then I saw the waiter. At first glance, he looked like all the others. White shirt, black vest, bow tie, tray of champagne flutes held just right. But something felt off, and when you've spent years looking for the one person in a crowd who wants to hurt someone important, that off is like someone hitting a fire alarm in your brain. His shoulders were too square, his walk too balanced, his eyes too focused. He wasn't scanning the room. He wasn't looking for raised hands, asking for a refill. He wasn't doing that nervous little dance you see with real servers, trying not to spill on a millionaire's shoes. His whole attention was on one thing, Olivia's empty hand. He moved in a straight line toward her, ignoring everyone else. The tray was full, but he didn't offer the drinks to the woman in red near him, or the laughing men by the silent auction table. He just glided right to Olivia's side, like he'd been pulled by a string. His gaze locked onto her, like a predator that already picked its target. That's when my stomach dropped. He lifted the tray, offered her the glass closest to him. You'd be amazed how quick these moments are. To everyone else, it looked like standard service at a fancy party. To me, it looked like a man delivering a bullet in a crystal shell. She smiled politely, took the glass without thinking. Of course she did. It was her event, her guests, her hotel. Why would she question a glass of champagne? This is where time slowed down for me. She lifted the glass. The bubbles caught the light, tiny explosions of gold, like the chandelier had fallen into the drink. I looked at the waiter's eyes, not his hands, and saw it. No small-talk smile. No enjoy the evening, ma'am. Just this cold intensity, like he didn't care what she said, as long as the drink touched her mouth. In my head, the math started screaming. Distance from me to her, distance from her lips to the glass, distance from poison to bloodstream. I had maybe 4 seconds. 4 seconds to decide if I was crazy, if I was about to ruin my life in front of 200 people and a dozen cameras, if I was going to tackle my boss to the floor or just stand there and watch her die with a nice, polite smile on my face and a yes, ma'am on my lips. You ever have a moment like that where your whole life comes down to one choice and you know there's no safe option? If it were you, what would you have done? Because here's what I did. I moved. I didn't shout. There wasn't time for explanations, and even if I had yelled, security would have grabbed me before they grabbed her. I pushed off from the wall, cut through the crowd, weaving between tuxedos and sequins, ignoring confused looks and raised brows. My heart was pounding, but my body knew this dance better than I knew my own reflection. The glass touched her lips. I reached her, grabbed her wrist, and instead of knocking the glass away, I pulled her toward me and kissed her. Everything stopped. Music, conversation, laughter, all of it snapped like someone cut the power. 200 heads turned in our direction. To them, it wasn't a life or death intervention. It was the black driver grabbing the white billionaire and planting one on her in the middle of her own event. To me, it was transfer of poison. The champagne slid from her mouth into mine, cold and sharp, carrying something bitter underneath the bubbles. A taste like metal and chemicals that hit my tongue like fire. It seared all the way down, and for a heartbeat, I tasted nothing but wrong. Then the room rushed back in, the gasps, the phones flashing up, the whispers starting Olivia's shock, turning into something hotter. Her free hand curling into a fist. She slapped me so hard my head snapped to the side. The sound cracked through the silence, echoed off marble, bounced off crystal. My cheek burned. My lips burned. My throat burned. And somewhere beneath all that, the first wave of numbness crept in. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she hissed, voice shaking with fury and humiliation. In that moment, I was the villain of the story. In her head, not the hero. Drivers don't kiss their bosses. They don't cross that line. They don't drag a woman out of her own gala with champagne still on her lips. My tongue felt thick, heavy, like somebody had poured cement into my mouth. My left eye started watering, not from the slap, but from whatever was now tearing through my system. My vision blurred at the edges. I grabbed her arm again, probably too hard, and leaned in close enough that our little bubble of air was ours alone. "We need to talk," I said every word, like pushing a boulder uphill right now. She tried to yank away. Of course she did. There were donors watching her reputation pride all of it lined up behind her. But there was something in my voice, or maybe something in my face that made her hesitate. She's good at reading people. You don't run a company like hers if you're not. So when I pulled her toward the side doors, she didn't scream. She didn't call security. She just walked stiffly next to me, her heels clicking on marble like gunshots. 200 sets of eyes burned into my back. People whispered, "Did you see that, and is she okay? And he's so fired." Someone's phone was already streaming, I'm sure. We pushed through the heavy doors into a quiet hallway lined with gold-framed mirrors. Out there, the music was muffled. The chatter turned into a distant hum. It was just me, her, and version after version of our reflection in the glass. Furious woman, wobbling man, both of us breathing too fast. She stepped away from me, arms crossing like armor. "You have 10 seconds, she said, voice cold. Now controlled the CEO voice. "Before I call the police, the board, and anyone else I can think of." I leaned against the wall because I honestly wasn't sure my legs were going to keep cooperating. My lips were starting to swell. Little blisters prickled at the corners of my mouth. My throat felt like it was tightening by the second. "Your champagne," I forced out, "was poisoned." She stared at me like I'd just told her the chandeliers were aliens. "What?" I saw the waiter. I said, fighting for air. He wasn't a waiter. Not really. The way he walked, the way he watched you. The way he only cared about that glass. I didn't have time to knock it away, so I did the only stupid thing that made sense. I gestured weakly between us at my mouth, at hers, at the space where people kiss for fun, not survival. She laughed, sharp and brittle. "That's insane. You're telling me you kissed me because you thought someone poisoned my drink, do you hear yourself?" But her voice wobbled at the end, and she's not the kind of person whose voice wobbles without a reason. "Look at me," I said. I stepped under the hallway light, let it hit my face. My lips were an angry red, swelling in an uneven line. Tiny blisters had already formed where the champagne had touched. My left eye was leaking non-stop, tears tracking down my cheek, completely separate from how I felt. My tongue felt like it belonged to someone else. I was sweating, but my hands were cold. Her expression changed. The anger didn't vanish, but it had to make room for something else. Fear, suspicion, that awful moment when your brain runs the scenario and realizes the crazy explanation actually fits the facts perfectly. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her hand came up toward my face, then pulled back like she might catch it if she touched me. "We need to get you to a hospital." I shook my head. The hallway tilting sideways. "Not yet." "The waiter, did you see where he went?" She was already pulling her phone out, thumb hovering over 911. I caught her wrist. Gentler this time. "If you call now, whoever did this will know it didn't work. They'll vanish." "They'll try again," I said. "Give me 5 minutes, just 5. Then you can call whoever you want." 5 minutes. She repeated. "Then hospital. And you tell me who you really are, because drivers don't talk like this." "Fair deal." "I worked for the Secret Service," I said, dragging in air. "Presidential detail. Threat assessment, crowd patterns, reading people, it's what I do. I left 3 years ago when my wife died, car accident. I had a daughter to raise alone, couldn't work those hours anymore." That part still hurt to say. Your father called me. 2 weeks before he died, I added. Said he needed a driver he could trust, someone who could keep an eye on things around you. By the time I was cleared to start, he was already in the ground. She frowned. He never mentioned you. HR has you as a normal hire. That's how he set it up, I said. On paper, I'm just the guy with the keys. In reality, I'm the guy who was supposed to see something like that waiter before it was too late. You really think someone is trying to kill me? She said. And this time, it wasn't sarcastic. It was quiet. I don't think I said, feeling a fresh wave of nausea. I know. The hallway door opened then, and a woman in a dark suit walked in with a medical bag, swinging from her hand. And that particular expression only ER doctors and combat medics have. Focused, mildly annoyed at the existence of emergencies, but absolutely in control. Hayes, she said, dropping to one knee beside me. You always did know how to make a night interesting. Hey, Sarah. I managed. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had patched me up before in a very different life. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. She'd expected some guy in paramedic gear, not a field physician, who looked like she'd walked straight out of a federal protocol manual. While Olivia explained, Sarah worked, checking my pupils, my pulse, my breathing, muttering about burning metallic taste, closing throat-blurred vision, rattling off possibilities like cyanide arsenic compound. All the fun things. She popped an IV in my arm, injected something cooling and bitter that pushed back against the fire. Set up fluids kept her voice calm, even when she clearly didn't like what she saw. Good news is you're stubborn, she said. Bad news is we don't know exactly what they used. We're treating worst case to keep you alive long enough for real labs. Story of my life, I said, because if I stopped cracking jokes, I might panic instead. While she worked, Olivia gave a blow-by-blow of the champagne. The tower in the middle of the room, the waiter who came out of nowhere, the tray, the glass, the way she hadn't thought about it, because why would she? That's the thing about being rich and spaces built for you. You assume they're safe until someone like me is bleeding in your hallway, trying to prove otherwise. Security is going to need a description, Sarah said. Gray suit, brown hair, scar on his left hand, professional posture. Probably military or private contractor background, I said. It came out slurred but clear enough. Call hotel security. Sarah told Olivia. Lock down the exits. Check every service corridor. Pull the footage. If he's still in the building, we find him. If not, we at least get his face. Olivia was already dialing her CEO voice, snapping into place. No trace of the woman who'd just been kissed against her will in front of 200 people. Orders went out. Within 15 minutes, security had found a gray jacket in a service hallway. No ID. No name tag, no owner. The man himself had vanished. You're stable for now, Sarah told me when the shaking in my hands finally eased. I want you in a hospital, but I'm not going to win that fight tonight, am I? 10 minutes, I said again. I need 10 minutes with her. Then you can drag me wherever you want. You're an idiot, she said. But fine. Olivia sat down across from me. The fury mostly gone, replaced by something like controlled terror. Tell me about my father, she said. Tell me why he hired you off the books and died before I even knew your name. So I did. I told her he'd suspected someone inside the company was stealing from him. Not just a little, but a lot. And that he'd narrowed it down to 2 people, Richard Bartlett, the CFO, and his old college roommate, and David Sutton, head of acquisitions, the guy who brought in all the flashy deals. I told her he'd been digging quietly, trying to avoid a scandal. And you think whoever killed him is now trying to kill me, she said. I think he found something I said, or was about to, and they panicked. They took him out, called it a heart attack. And now, they're trying to make sure you never see whatever he saw. She sat there chewing on that. eyes unfocused, like she was scanning through months of meetings, conversations, weird little coincidences. The gala went on the other side of the wall, blissfully unaware. "If we are going to figure this out," she said, finally, "we are not doing it in a hallway while you're half dying. We're going to my apartment." "Now," Hospital Sarah said again. "We're taking the hospital with us," Olivia said, looking at Sarah. "You're not leaving him, right?" Sarah sighed. "I hate rich people," she muttered, but she grabbed her bag and nodded. We left through a service exit, avoiding the ballroom. No one stopped us. To anyone who asked later, I was the crazy driver who'd kissed his boss and gotten hustled out before security could cause a bigger scene. That story was convenient. It kept the real one quiet long enough for us to move. Olivia's building downtown was as secure as you'd expect. Underground parking, gated access key cards, cameras everywhere. The elevator opened directly into her penthouse, and once we stepped inside, I understood her a little better. No gold everywhere, no animal skins, no stereotypical billionaire villain decor. Just clean lines, warm wood, soft light, and walls covered in photographs. Her parents on a beach with toddler Olivia, her father in an ugly Christmas sweater, her mother cutting a cake graduation photos, ribbon cuttings, candid shots of her laughing instead of posing. Surprised, she asked when she saw me taking it in. "A little," I said. "I thought there'd be more marble lions." "I get enough of that at work," she said. "I just wanted a place that feels like home." That line stuck with me because as much as we lived in different worlds that part, I understood. Wanting just one space where you're not performing for anyone. She led us to a study with a massive desk, 3 monitors, and bookshelves full of binders and thick volumes. Sarah made me sit while she checked my vitals again, her frown softening just a little when she saw the treatment was working at least for the moment. "Everything my father did on a computer is here," Olivia said, as she woke up the screens. "When he died, I had it pull a full archive of his hard drives, his email, his calendar." "Show me his calendar," I said. "The last couple months before he died." Color-coded blocks filled the screen. Meetings with RB, recurring lunches with DS board sessions, calls with lawyers, product launches. Then, tucked between normal entries, one line stood out like a bruise. "JK, confidential audit, off-site," I read. 2 weeks before he died, no location. "Who's JK?" she asked. "You don't know?" I said. She shook her head. "I've never heard those initials in any meeting. Audit plus confidential." When he was already worried about embezzlement, I said my old training clicking into place. "That sounds like a forensic accountant. Someone outside the company. Someone he didn't want on the official books." She thought for a beat, then her eyes widened. "He kept an address book," she said, "like old-fashioned paper. Said not everything should live in the cloud." She came back with a worn leather book. The pages creased and softened from years of use. Names and numbers written in her father's neat, precise handwriting. She flipped through to the K's finger tracking down the column. "James Kirkland," she read. "Forensic accountant. Boston address." There it was, JK. I slid my prepaid phone across the desk. "Use this," I said. "If someone inside the company is involved, you don't want them seeing his name pop up on your phone records." She dialed. 4 rings, then voicemail. She left a message voice steady, identifying herself, saying she needed to discuss an audit he'd done for her father, asking him to call back on that number as soon as possible. When she hung up, the silence in that room got heavier, like the air itself was bracing for whatever came next. This is probably a good place to say, stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. The callback came about half an hour later. Olivia put him on speaker. "Ms. Cartwright," he said, cautious. "I was wondering when you'd find me." That's not how you start a conversation if you think everything is normal. He confirmed what we had already suspected, and then some. Her father had asked him to quietly audit Cartwright Industries' offshore accounts and some suspicious vendor payments. What he'd found was a 7-year pattern of theft money siphoned through shell corporations and phony invoices, nearly $50 million in total. He'd sent her father the full report 3 days before the heart attack. Her father had called him, told him he knew who was behind it, said he was going to confront the person. That was the last time they spoke. A few weeks later, someone broke into James's office, didn't take anything, but moved his files around, just enough to let him know they'd been there. "I've been careful since then," he said, which is accountant speak for "I've been scared for my life." Olivia asked if he still had copies of the report. He did. She asked if they could meet. He agreed, but only in a public place during daylight. They set a time for the next morning. When the call ended, she looked like someone had taken the floor out from under her, and she was just now realizing she'd been standing over a void this whole time. "My father knew," she said quietly. "He knew someone was stealing from the company. He knew they were dangerous. And he tried to fix it alone. And he tried to protect you by putting me next to you," I said. "He just didn't get the chance to tell you why." Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She'd had months of practice holding it together. "So what do we do?" she asked. "Run to the nearest police station with what we have, and hope they don't laugh us out of the building." "We gather everything first," I said. "Your father wasn't stupid. If he hired JK off the books, he didn't leave all his cards sitting on a company server. He would have had a backup somewhere safer. Somewhere only you, or someone he really trusted, could access." She stared at the floor for a moment, then nodded slowly. "There's a safe deposit box," she said, "at First National. He told me it had important documents, and that if anything ever happened to him, I should open it. I couldn't. I didn't want to go through his stuff after he died, so I never went." "Tomorrow," I said. "We go tomorrow." And then Hospital Sarah cut in, giving me a look that said she was done playing. Tomorrow, I agreed. The next day, the three of us walked into First National's stone building, all high ceilings, brass rails, and that quiet hum of money doing whatever money does when nobody is looking. Olivia signed the forms. The clerk escorted us to the vault. 2 keys turned together, and a long metal box slid out of the wall with a soft scrape. Inside was a single overstuffed manila envelope. Olivia opened it with shaking hands. Financial documents spilled out. Bank statements, corporate registrations, diagrams drawn in her father's hand, connecting shell companies to real people. On top of it all was a letter, folded her name, written across the front. She unfolded it and read aloud. "Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry I didn't protect you the way I should have." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "I discovered that Richard Bartlett has been embezzling from the company for 7 years. He's hidden the money in layers of false transactions and offshore accounts. The proof is in this envelope. I was going to confront him, but I wanted you to have this insurance first. If something happens to me, take this to the authorities. Don't trust anyone in the company. Please forgive me for putting you in danger. I thought I could handle this quietly. I was wrong. I love you. Be safe. Dad." She finished and just stood there, breathing hard, like every word had been a punch to the chest. "Richard," she whispered, "he was my father's best friend. I've known him my whole life. He came to my birthday parties. He carried me on his shoulders." I flipped through the pages, feeling anger rise in my own chest. There it was, black and white, line by line, account by account, tracing millions into shell companies that all led eventually to entities tied back to Richard. James's full report was there, 2 neatly bound pages, covered in charts and explanations. This was the twist right here. The kindly CFO, the uncle who'd stood by her at the funeral, the man everyone thought was a rock, was the one who'd been gutting the company from the inside. And by her father's own words, the one he'd been about to confront when a heart attack took him out. So now what? March. Straight to the FBI. Drop the envelope on a random desk, Hope. We got an honest agent and not someone on Richard's Christmas list. We take this to the feds, I said, because the part of me that still believed in process wanted that to be the answer. We have motive means financial proof your father's letter. Olivia shook her head. Slowly, eyes still on the letter. Richard has judges, prosecutors, politicians, all on speed dial, she said. My father knew that. That's why he called this insurance, not justice. If we take this in without something undeniable, he'll lawyer his way out, cry about being framed by a grieving daughter, and we'll be the ones on defense. So what, then, I asked. You want to play his game quietly in back rooms? Hope he slips. No, she said. And when she looked up, there was steel in her eyes again. We make him say it. Out loud. On tape. In his own voice. We make him forget he's not untouchable. You want to bait him, I said. I want to make him think he won, she answered. I'll tell him I found my father's files. I'll tell him I don't want a scandal, that I'll trade my silence for a payout and his retirement. He'll come because pride won't let him ignore that, and he will say exactly what he did because he wants to feel smarter than me. Dangerous plan, Sarah muttered. Very, I agreed. I like it. We set it up that afternoon. Olivia used the prepaid phone to text. Richard told him she'd found some of her father's private files, offshore accounts, shell companies, things that didn't add up with official reports. Said she didn't want to destroy the company with a scandal, but she also didn't want to be broke or in jail if it all went public. Asked if they could talk. He replied within minutes. My office. 8 p.m. Tonight. Come alone. Yeah. Alone. That evening, Jack and 2 agents I trusted sat in an unmarked van down the block from Cartwright Industries headquarters, headphones on, listening to the feed from the wire we taped under Olivia's blouse. We tested the signal 3 times in the car before she stepped out. You don't have to do this, I told her one more time in the underground garage. Yes, I do, she said. For my father. For everyone who works in that building and has no idea what's been going on above their heads. And for you, because you almost died this week for a job that was supposed to keep me safe. I chose that. I reminded her. That's not on you. Maybe, she said, but I'm still going to fix it. We rode the elevator up together, her in a simple suit. Hair pulled back, no jewelry that could be grabbed me in position, as the driver who didn't know his place. The executive floor was almost empty at that hour. Offices dark, the carpet so thick our footsteps barely made a sound. Richard's door was open, light spilling into the hall. He stood behind his desk when we entered, every inch the concerned father figure. Silver hair perfectly in place, suit jacket draped over the chair like he'd just come off some long day of noble sacrifice. Olivia, he said, his voice full of warmth. Thank you for coming. After that incident at the gala, I've been so worried. Are you all right? His eyes cut to me. I thought I said come alone. My driver doesn't leave my side anymore, she said smoothly. Given everything that's happened, his smile thinned for a second, then came back. Of course security is important. Have a seat. She sat across from him. I stayed by the door close enough to get between them, if I had to far enough back to keep up the illusion. So he said, folding his hands. You said you found some files of your father's. She pulled a folder from her bag, a careful selection of copies, not originals, and laid it on the desk. Offshore accounts. She said shell companies' money being moved in circles that only make sense if someone's stealing it. 7 years of theft. $50 million. All leading back to you. He didn't touch the folder, didn't even glance down. His eyes stayed on her. "Those are serious accusations," he said. "And this is based on what scribbles your father left behind when he wasn't thinking clearly. We both know he was under a lot of stress near the end, not sleeping, worrying about everything. Paranoia can look very much like diligence on paper. I know he had a forensic accountant from Boston verify all of it," she said, voice steady. "I know he put a copy of the report and a letter naming you in a safe deposit box, and I know that 3 days after he got that report, he conveniently dropped dead." The mask slipped just a fraction. He blinked. "And you've had this proof all this time?" he asked. "Why come to me now?" "Because I don't want to blow up the company," she said. "I don't want employees losing their jobs. Stock prices crashing, years of my father's work going down in flames because you were greedy. I just want this to go away." Quietly, she took a breath. "You stole 50 million. I'm offering you a way to keep 30. You move 20 million into an account I control. You announce your retirement for health reasons. You disappear from public life. I destroy the files. No police, no press." He stared at her for a long moment, then laughed a short, sharp sound. "Olivia, you sweet child," he said. "Do you really think you can walk into the FBI with a little folder and take me down? I've built this company's reputation for 30 years. I have lawyers who eat audits like that for breakfast. I have friends in every corner of this city. Judges, regulators, politicians, men who owe me favors. Your father thought he was untouchable too. Look how that worked out. There it was twisted into a threat. So you admit it," she said quietly. "You killed him." "I admit nothing," he said, leaning back. "But hypothetically, if someone were stealing from a company and the owner discovered it, that person might have to protect themselves. It's just business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal." That line always gets me. "And the gala," she asked, "the champagne?" He shrugged. "Last night was unfortunate. You were never supposed to come back from that party. The help was supposed to handle it cleanly. But your driver was far more observant than his resume suggested." His gaze slid past her to me. "You used to be law enforcement, didn't you?" he said. "Secret Service. Maybe I did wonder why a man like you was driving cars." "Just trying to make a living," I said. So he went on. "Here we are. You have your accusations. I have my reputation, and we have no proof that would stand up in a courtroom. It's your word against mine." "That's where you're wrong," Olivia said. She stood, fingers going to her jacket. She pulled it open just enough to reveal the wire taped against her skin, the tiny mic blinking. "This conversation has been live the entire time," she said. "Federal agents are listening right now. They heard you talk about my father. They heard you talk about my death as unfortunate. They heard you say it was just business." For the first time, real fear flashed across his face. It came and went in a second, replaced by rage. "You stupid girl," he spat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Then his hand dipped into his desk drawer and came out with a gun. I was moving before my mind even had the chance to get scared. I stepped in front of Olivia, arms out a little, putting as much of myself between her and that barrel as I could. My brain measured distance, angle, trigger pressure, all the things it used to measure in training exercises where no one actually died. "Don't," I said. "This floor is watched. The exits are covered. You're surrounded, Richard. There's no way out that doesn't end with you in cuffs or a body bag." "There's always a way out," he said, voice calm in a way that scared me more than the gun. "I just need a head start." He backed toward the door, the barrel never wavering. We could have rushed him, tried to disarm him. But in the real world, desperate men with guns don't miss every time, and I wasn't going to gamble with her life. He slipped into the hallway, stepped back, turned and ran. We followed at a distance, both of us moving fast, but not stupid. Down the corridor, through the stairwell, metal steps, ringing under our feet. 10 floors down. My lungs burned, my still healing throat reminded me it hated me, but adrenaline doesn't ask permission. We burst into the underground garage in time to see his car, swinging toward the ramp headlights bouncing off concrete columns. Then other headlights slid into place. Unmarked vehicles blocked the exit. Doors flew open. FBI agents spread out like they'd rehearsed this 100 times, which they had. Jack stood at the front badge, out voice booming orders. Richard slammed his brakes, tried to reverse, found more cars behind him. Nowhere to go. They pulled him out, disarmed him, slapped cuffs on him, while he shouted about lawyers and illegal surveillance. And I'll ruin you all. No one listened. His words didn't matter anymore. The wire, the documents, the safe deposit letter, the attempted poisoning, all of it stacked up higher than his money. Olivia's hand found mine. "We got him," she whispered, like she didn't quite believe it. "Yeah," I said, watching the man who'd ruined her family get shoved into a car we did. The hours after that blurred into fluorescent lights and questions. Agents took our statements, played back the recording, paged through the files from the safe deposit box, called James Kirkland, to corroborate pulled hotel footage of the waiter no one had hired. Sarah filed her report about the poisoning, the symptoms, the treatment. By dawn, Richard was in a cell, and for the first time in months, Olivia wasn't standing completely alone. I drove her home in my battered personal car as the sun came up, painting the city soft gold. She stared out the window, quiet. Watching people go about their normal mornings, Afi in hand, no idea what had just shifted under their feet. In the underground garage, she didn't get out right away. She just sat there. "Thank you," she said finally, "for seeing what no one else saw. For giving up your own safety, your own reputation to save my life. For following the threads when it would have been easier to just drive and keep your head down. I'm sorry I couldn't protect your father," I said. "That one sits heavy. I came in too late." She turned to me, eyes tired, but clearer than I'd ever seen them. "You protected me," she said. I think that's the only thing he was still trying to do at the end. We sat there for a second, two people, who technically came from different planets bound together by something nobody would ever fully understand if they weren't there. "So what happens now?" she asked. "You're not really just a driver, and I don't really need a driver who can spot assassins from across a ballroom anymore." I thought about Sophie, about the rent, about the fact that every time I'd tried to be normal, trouble had found me anyway. "I don't know," I said. "I've been running from that old life for 3 years. I'm not sure what the new one looks like yet." "Well," he said, with a small, real smile, "when you figure it out, let me know. Cartwright Industries is going to need a new head of security. Someone I actually trust. Someone who knows what it means to take a hit for somebody else." "I have a daughter," I said. "She comes first. Any job I take has to make room for that. I like kids," she said. "Bring her by the office sometime. Let her see what her dad really does." She started to get out, then paused, hand on the door. "That kiss," she said, glancing back at me. "At the gala. Was it really just about the poison?" "At the time," I said. "Yeah. Now, I'm not sure I can say it was only that." She laughed softly. "When you figure that out too, let me know." She walked away. And for the first time since my wife died, I felt something in my chest that wasn't just grief or survival. It was possibility. 3 months later, I was standing in the back of a press room in a suit that actually fit, listening to Olivia give a statement about the embezzlement scandal and the changes Cartwright Industries was making. New oversight committees, stricter controls, transparent reporting. She didn't sugarcoat the damage Richard had done. She didn't pretend the company was faultless. She owned it and laid out how they were going to fix it. Investors hated her for about 5 minutes. Then the stock went up. Sophie sat next to me in a swivel chair, swinging her legs, drawing on a notepad. She'd gotten used to being in the building a couple afternoons a week, doing homework in the break room, charming the staff. According to her, I wasn't just a driver anymore. I was head of security, which she said very dramatically. When Olivia came back to her office after the press conference, Sophie held up her drawing. "It's you," she said proudly. "You're wearing a cape because you're the boss, and bosses are like superheroes." Olivia laughed, genuinely tired shoulders relaxing. "I've always wanted a cape," she said. "Thank you, Sophie." I stood there watching my daughter's world and mine overlap in this strange, fragile piece, and thought maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. That night, after dropping Sophie with the babysitter, I went home to my little apartment, pulled out an old box from the back of my closet, and sat with my wife again for the first time in a long time. Her smile in those photos felt both close and impossibly far, but the weight on my chest didn't feel as crushing as before. "I'm doing my best," I told her picture. "Sophie's doing great. You'd be proud of her. You'd probably tell me I'm working too much." Again, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Dinner tomorrow. Just us. I'll even let you pay." I stared at it for a second, smiling like an idiot, then typed back, "Yo, but only if you promise not to order champagne." Her reply came fast. "Too soon, Nathan. Way too soon. But yes, I promise." Yeah, that happened. The story could end there, neat and tidy. Bad guy in prison. Company saved single dad. Rebuilds his life, maybe falls in love again. But life doesn't really care about our need for clean endings. A week later, an envelope showed up at my office. No return address. No stamps. Just my name, written in block letters, dropped at reception by someone in a hoodie the guard couldn't describe beyond that. Because of course, inside was a single photograph, my wife's car. The night of the accident. A shot from a new angle high, like it had been taken from a building window or a traffic camera nobody had ever mentioned. Her sedan twisted in the middle of the intersection, a delivery truck frozen mid-impact glass like diamonds in the air. On the back of the photo, in the same block letters as my name, someone had written, "Richard Bartlett wasn't working alone. We're still watching." I stared at that line for a long time, the noise of the office fading into static. For 3 years, I'd told myself I was crazy for thinking her accident wasn't just an accident. Trucks run red lights. Bad things happen to good people. That's what everyone says when they don't want you to look too closely. I dug for a while, called in a couple favors, hit walls, and finally, for Sophie's sake, started letting it go. This photograph was someone reaching into that old wound and ripping it open again. So let me ask you this. If you were me, what would you do? Walk into Olivia's office with it. Drag her into another war when she's barely cleaned up the last one. March straight to the FBI again with a picture and a threatening note and a gut feeling. Or quietly start digging, this time with the resources you didn't have 3 years ago. Because I'll tell you what I did. I didn't tell Olivia. Not yet. I didn't tell Sophie anything, obviously. That night, after my kid was asleep, I pulled out the box of accident reports, insurance letters, printouts, the stuff I'd shoved onto a shelf, and pretended I wasn't still thinking about. I laid it all out on the table next to that new photo and started reading again, line by line, with a different kind of focus. Back then, I was a widower, with a job, and a kid, and no backup. Now I was head of security at a massive company with connections, access to systems, people who owed me favors. Whoever sent that envelope thought they were scaring me. What they really did was remind me I'm not done. Because that's the thing about people like me. The ones who are trained to protect, who've already lost more than they thought they could survive. Once we know the darkness has our name on a list, we stop running and start hunting. So yeah, we took down the guy who stole 50 million and killed a man who trusted him like a brother. But the game behind that man, the system that lets people like him exist, The shadow network that might have decided my wife was expendable 3 years ago. That's still out there. Do you think that's fair? That someone can wreck lives with a signature with a quiet shove at the top of the stairs, knowing if they get caught, their worst day is a white-collar prison with tennis courts, while single moms go to jail for bounced checks. Do you think justice really looks the same when you're rich and when you're just trying to keep the lights on? I'd really like to know what you think. So if you've watched this far, tell me in the comments. If you were standing in that ballroom, would you have made the same choice I did? Kissed your boss in front of everyone to save her life, knowing it would blow up your own? If you found a letter naming your father's best friend as a thief and a murderer, would you trust the system? Or would you set a trap like Olivia did? And if you opened an envelope like the one I got with proof, your worst suspicion about your spouse's death might be true, would you dig or would you walk away for your own peace? If you've ever fought a system that felt rigged, if you've ever been the invisible one in the room who saw what nobody else wanted to see, if you've ever had to make a split-second decision and live with it for years after, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Argue with me. Tell me I was wrong. Tell me what you would have done differently if this hit you at all. Tap like so other people hear it too. Share this with someone who thinks ordinary people don't do extraordinary things, and subscribe if you want to know what happens when I stop being just a driver and start really pulling on the threads behind that photograph. Because the kiss in the ballroom, that was just the beginning.